welcome to my second YouTube video. I said I would make a second one if I got 10 likes. I did not. But here I am anyways. First video, oh yeah, I want to say a little more about some other feedback I got about my first video. Um, my own self-criticism is that I needed music. I always like a YouTube video with some intro music, and also gonna have some outro music. And then got some feedback that my first video was 27 minutes, um, and somebody said that they often watch YouTube videos when they're going to the bathroom at work, and that they would like a longer video. So I'm gonna make this. I don't know how long this will be, but I might push past 27 minutes. Um, yeah. The first video was looking at two different lenses. Summicron 35mm version 1. I call it the 8E, 8 element, 80s. And then the Light Lens Lab clone lens, which is, there's a few thousand of these now floating around in the market somewhere. Um, this one sells for, right now about a third or a fifth of the price of a real one. So, people are interested. I was interested. And then to add to the mix, another one that looks pretty darn similar, the Summaron 2.8 35mm, which has been a favorite of mine over the last year. And so the first video, I just put it on the Fuji and looked at digital pictures. And the 80 was the predator, and the Light Lens Lab ended up being the prey. So much so that I was ready to put the Light Lens Lab back into the mail and send it back and say no thank you. But it felt like I really shouldn't do that because I'm not that much of a digital shooter. It'll probably come back to me in the future, but right now I'm in a film phase of my life, mostly shooting black and white 35mm double goat, also known as Kodak 522 double X. And so I was like, I gotta try it, and be interesting to see if what happens when I put on film. All right, anything else to say before I get started? Right, this was basically the end of a roll, um, last dozen shots or so, where I was like, okay, let's just step outside and take some pictures. It was an early morning situation, pretty washed out sky, a little overcast. The sun has been up maybe 1 or 2 hours, a couple hours. So no hard shadows at all. And yeah, this is HC 110, 14-minute development, with little agitation, and my exposure index is 800, so this is like a solid +2 push, which is why I'm getting I'm getting quite a bit of contrast for a pretty flat lit scene. And then something about 522 as a film is like it is it does not do fine detail. It eats that up. It is a medium detail film, and especially when I push it to EI 800, it's a coarse grain. So, but that's what I like to shoot. So Now here, I took some 2.8 shots because I wanted the Summaron to play on equal ground. And I mean, let's, just to look at them real quick at kind of a full view. Um, so Summaron, Light Lens Lab, Summicron 8E. And now let's go in a bit. So I focus using this nice bright edge here. My Summicron has the goggles, which brings up, means I'm using the 50mm frame lines. Makes it a little harder to focus. So I was kind of curious if I was going to be able to focus as accurately with the 8E. So I'm impressed here that the best definition and edge clarity here around my focus point actually is clearly goes to the 8E. So I'm not worried about being able to focus it so much anymore. And then also this was an interesting spot where you hope to have great acutance on a line like that, where you get a highlight and a dark area right there next to each other. And again, if you just look at the flag, the best acutance. Remember, this is all in the same tank, same developer. Goes to the 8E again. I don't know what that is, just like extra sharpness. I should say I'm not an expert here. This is somewhat of an amateur hour. Then let's go here into this corner. Right, this is, first thing I'll say is the Light Lens Lab looks pretty similar to the 8E, and the Summaron is in its own category here. It's kind of muddy. Not kind, it's very muddy. You know, I, the Light Lens Lab has a touch more contrast, maybe even a little bit more, definition or sharpness. But at the same time, like this should be an out of focus area. Um, so, and then I don't know, is there anything else I want to look at here? We could maybe just come check out another out of focus area on the back end. You know, it's all pretty similar. There's almost maybe a little more out of focus to the 8E, which is what I would expect. But this is all super minor stuff at this point. Okay, moving on. Now it's the same shot, but at f8. I partly picked f8 because I think of the Summaron as being superior at f8. So I kind of wanted to, one is stop down a bit, but I chose f8 thinking that I was giving the Summaron maybe a chance to win. Summaron, Light Lens Lab, 8E. First I want to focus here on right, that's the Light Lens Lab, and that's the 8E. And first thing I'll say is that is different. I haven't edited. This is all the same scanner settings, defaults in Capture One. Right, looking at Summicron, Light Lens Lab. Two things going on really. One is, the coatings are different. I don't know if they're supposed to be, but they definitely are. There's just more contrast in the Light Lens Lab, and more than that is like, there's that morning light is coming up, on the other side of the mailbox, kind of to the right, and I really think there's some veiling flare coming in that's giving the shadows a little more lightness in the Summicron. Right, look at the mailbox itself. Right, we just get more lift. Maybe even be some like veiling flare that's hitting kind of a little bit of a lift in the middle of the image. But that's the main thing that stands out to me. And then if we just want to kind of come in, we're no longer, this is not the focus point. Oh, let's grab them all. Right. Something you'd expect with f8 to be nicely defined, sharp. Um, all right, here again, Summicron 80 crushing. Anything else we want to go see? I don't know, probably not. Let's see here. I mean, again, like, yeah, the Summaron actually I kind of thought would do better. And I'll give it to the Lightlens Lab that it's definitely more like the 80 than it is the Summaron. But if I'm picking one, I'm picking the Summicron. Okay. Now, oh, it's tempting to want to edit these, but trying to keep things simple here. This is a 2.8 shot. Same order, right? Summaron, Lightlens Lab, 80. First thing that jumps out to me is we've actually got lens flare on the Summaron. It's coming across here. You can kind of see that line as it comes in here and gets to the middle of the image. The Lightlens Lab has no lens flare, and then the 80 does, right? Same line across here, and then also we got a little right there. So, right, flare free, flare. So you might be like, that's pretty good for Lightlens Lab, But we'll come back around to the next series. We'll see that this is not a consistent story. It's just different. Then let's come into the middle. Grab all three. Right, the one that's Summaron is last place. Right, Lightlens Lab and 80 are pretty darn similar. I give a slight preference for the 80. What else do we want to go visit? This would be a good thing to check out because it's part of the reason I like to shoot double X is I like that the attention is not in the fine detail, and it helps draw more attention to these nice lines. And if I'm just looking at evaluating that, I mean they're all pretty similar, but I do again it's a slight nod for the 80. It's gonna get tired of saying that. All right, moving on. This is the same thing, but at f8. Now, Summaron still has that flare coming in. Lightlens Lab is flare free, but contrastier. And then the 80 has flare. It's a different kind of flare. It's like it's kind of it's the flare that's really hard to detect, right? It comes into here. If I didn't have the comparison image, I probably wouldn't have caught it. But it's that veiling flare that like lifts the shadows, right? Compare that to that. It makes me wonder, when people say that the 80 is, it's a really good black and white lens. I think a lot of times you're actually, it's the kind of there's like 60 flavors of flare, by the way, but it's like the kind of flare that helps both lift the shadows, but also kind of taper the highlights from blowing out too, which can be kind of a double win, and then you increase contrast through a different part of your process. And if it does it in this nice way, it's almost like a heavenly beam. But if you're a commercial photographer, like that's probably not what you're wanting to enter your scene. All right, so main thing that stands out to me. Anything else we want to visit here? Maybe come visit this section. Okay, Summaron, Light Lens Lab, 80. You might say, hey, look, that's a little sharper there for the Light Lens Lab. But that's maybe an out of focus area. But overall, like especially compared to my first video, I'm feeling good about the Light Lens Lab. Is like, especially if you're someone who doesn't mind that the contrast of the coding. And but hey, let's keep going. Um, I have to apologize that I hit the end of my roll, so I didn't get the 80 on this one, which is a shame. But this is the 2.8 Summaron to Light Lens Lab. Just unedited here. I gotta tip the hat to the Light Lens Lab. Um, that's basically, that looks really good. So I chose this as a subject because this is the kind of you know I like it. I mean, the and double X handles this well. Um, you know, Again, this is uh, exposure index of 800, straight out of the scanner, unedited. Um, Pretty boring scene, really, but it's like an enjoyable photograph. um, Summaron doesn't has more vignetting, and yeah, I don't want to look at it too much, but then now on this one, I've also got to say, I'm outside, right? And the light changed a little bit, and I can tell because look at the way the sun's hitting these leaves coming in underneath, right? There's no sunshine getting in there. Now I've got sunshine. Um, Now, fortunately, I'm glad that the light stayed pretty consistent between these two shots, which is the Light Lens Lab and the 80. And so these last three are my f8. So here's the Summaron, Light Lens Lab, 80. I might focus here on the Light Lens Lab and 80 because the light stayed the same basically. If I come in here, oh, that's the other video. Now, two things that are just jumping out is more contrast in Light Lens Lab, but then also, this was interesting, is I've got flare, right? The sun is almost like 80 degrees to my left, but I've got flare on the Light Lens Lab coming through here, right? You can see it coming in. I did not use hoods on these. Um, I'm going to take a tangent for a second. The new 35 mil. No, I can't call it new, but if you bought a new 35mm Summicron spherical, it comes with a more substantial hood that blocks a lot of the finder, which is. But I kind of wonder how much Leica kind of realized that they needed to protect this lens from flare. Um, but I don't mind flare because I'm not you know, I'm in it for artistic reasons mostly. Ba, 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 ba. Yeah, let's come back in here, compare the Light Lens Lab and the 80. Definitely more contrast in the one above. And then if we start coming over here, I mean, pretty darn similar, really. But 80's getting a little more edge definition. Coming up here again, pretty remarkably similar. If we add the Summicron, just to be like, what was a different lens? They're all three amazing lenses. I should say that. I'm really lucky to have these three lenses to try. One other thing that's I got interested in here. I might be making it up, but the 80 is darker here. But this is f8. It's like I wouldn't expect vignetting to be coming into play. So I don't quite know what to make of it, except that the light that's coming off the road right there is probably very UV heavy, right? Judging just by where the sun was and the angle of reflection, I would expect there to be an abundance of UV light coming off the road, and it's possible that the Summicron coating is absorbing more UV light. I don't know. Not sure how else to explain it. It might just be nothing. Okay. Now, to end my video, let's see. I did send back, before I finished this video, I sent the Light Lens Lab lens back. So my final thoughts on it were that it's definitely more like the 80 than the Summaron. And once I got out of my closet and started taking black and white film, I think that the Light Lens Lab fared pretty well, and I could see it being, a nice one lens to have. But there's enough places where I did prefer the 80, and if you watch the two videos, you saw that. So I sent the Light Lens Lab back. And Summaron, I mean, I feel like just from these pictures, I'm like, oof, man, that's not going to be the one I keep either. It's nice because it fits on my Barnax, but I don't want to hold on to too many things. Now, to end the video, I am gonna start my outro music, and I'm also gonna finish. I'm gonna edit my three favorite photos, or each of my favorite photos from these three scenes, which I'm not really that excited about, but I think that's a good way to end. So let's do that. Let's do that.
You silent, you silent.